Hello everyone. In this lesson we're going to talk about the DOS command line. This is the text-based interface to the PC. So let's go ahead and jump in. So we're going to talk about a number of things to get you up to speed with the DOS command line. First we'll look at the general types of interfaces that are available on a computer. And then we'll look at what are the advantages of the DOS command line. Is it something ancient that's not really needed anymore? We'll look a little bit deeper at that. Then we'll look at some of the basics, how to get started, how to get help, and then some of the basic commands to get you going. There's tons of commands, so this is just a small subset of those. But we're going to start off by looking at the directory command, how to create directories, how to navigate around a directory tree, how to copy and delete files, to display a directory tree once you've constructed a tree, and then basically how to exit. And then I'll go with a complete demonstration of all of those things. So let's go ahead and look at all the details then of the DOS command line. So there are basically two types of interfaces that are available on computer systems. The first one is a graphical user interface, or GUI, or GUI. And examples of that are ones that we use every day. A Windows machine, the Mac OS, also the interfaces on your phone, the iPhone or Android. Those are graphical user interfaces that are designed to point and click. In addition, there are command line interfaces, or CLI. Examples of that are the DOS command line, PowerShell, and also the Linux shell, either the Bourne shell or the Bash shell. These give you a little bit more control over the computer system, and we're going to look at a specific example of that today, the DOS command line. So what are the advantages of using the command prompt? Well, the first one is you have a high level of control over the operations that you do. For example, you can use wildcards to operate on multiple files at one time, and we'll look at some of the details of that. It's also a lot more efficient for many operations. For copying large amounts of files or doing backups or any kind of automated operation, it really is a lot more efficient to use the command line. In addition, you can string commands together to create a program. This is called a batch file with the DOS command line. In Linux, it's called a shell script. So this is a huge advantage that you can use this for automation of many tasks. And it really is a must for server administration. If you're going to do multiple machines, lots of servers, it's really essential to use the command line to automate many of these things. So let's go ahead now and look at the details of how you would actually use the command line. Okay, to get started with the command line, the first thing you can do on the Windows machine is do a search, and you can search for command or CMD. And when you see that, you'll see the command prompt app. Just go ahead and click on that and that'll launch the command line. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let's jump onto our Windows machine and take a peek. Okay, now I'm connected up to my Windows machine here, and I'll go down to the search and I'll type in CMD, and notice the command prompt comes up as far as the best match. So I'll go ahead and double click on that, and here I am. I'm now in my command prompt window. And so this is where you can type in commands, and we're going to look at several different commands that you can do. But notice that it puts you with a prompt so that you can enter in your command, and it also shows you what directory that you're in. For my default directory, and that's the directory that it's going to place you in when you open up, is users Eric. So that's my home directory. So that's the default directory that you'll be located in. And we'll talk about directories in a little bit more detail, but basically on a Windows machine is a tree structured directory, and it's the exact same thing that you would see in the File Explorer, and we'll look at that in an example here in a little while. But this is basically how you get started. So then you would just type in your command. The first command that we're going to talk about is the directory command. You would just type in dir and hit the return key, and that will show you the directory of the files in this particular directory. Just another little tip here, if you get confused and there's lots of commands there and you basically want to kind of start over, you can type in CLS and that'll clear the screen for you. It doesn't really affect anything, just kind of gets the garbage out of the way. If you're putting in a lot of commands and there's some noise in the way, you can just type in CLS to clear the screen. So now let's go ahead and look at a bunch of different commands here to get you started, to kind of get you basic proficiency with the DOS command line. So one of the really nice things about the DOS command line is that help is built in, and it's pretty easy to access. It really couldn't be any easier. You type in help, and it will show you all of the commands that are available within the DOS command line. It'll show them in alphabetical order, and you can scroll through the list. If you want to get more detail on any one of those particular items, you can type in help CD, for example, if we look at the CD or the change directory command, you can type in help space CD and it will give you help on that particular topic. So there's a ton of commands. We're only going to talk about a few key ones to really get you started here. But what's really nice is you can scroll through these and try to figure out what they do by looking through the help section. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like on the DOS machine. All right, we're back on our DOS machine now, and let's go ahead and look at help. So I can scroll through this. I can use my mouse wheel and I can scroll through this, and you can get an idea of all the different commands there are with the command line. So there's a ton of them. We're going to look at a subset of these that are really kind of the most essential, but it's all listed out in alphabetical order. So if you want to get help on a particular topic, once again, let's see, here's the tree command. So if we type in help tree, it will show us the options that are available for the commands. Most of the commands in the DOS command set have switches and options in there. And we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. But each command will have some options that give it some additional capabilities or additional things to do, as well as it'll behave slightly differently. So we'll take a look at that. So that's really it for the help system. Let's go ahead and get started and start looking at some of the most important commands. Okay, the first command that we're going to look at is the directory command, or dir. So another way you can get help, if you look at the screenshot, you can do dir/?. You can also type in help dir. Either way, it's the same command, and it'll bring you the options that are available. So if you type in directory, it gives you a listing of files, folders that are within a particular directory. Then there's some options that are available. You can do dir/B, for example, will give you a bare format. You can do /L to do lowercase. You can order by different things. So if you type in /ON, which is the default, it'll give you the order by name. But you can also do /OS, that'll order by size, /OD by date. And then at the bottom, you'll notice there's a /W for the wide list format. So we'll look at some examples of that when we jump back onto the DOS machine. But this is typical, is that the help file will first give you the command syntax at the top of the help, and then it'll give you a number of options that are available for that command. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like when we actually type in the commands on the DOS machine. All right, so here we are. Here's the basic directory command if I just do dir. Now let's look at some of the, and you'll notice that it shows anything with the dir as a directory and not a file. So let's go ahead and now let's look at some of the options. So if I do a dir/B, that's the bare format. And notice I don't get nearly as much information about our directory and file structure. If I want to type in, another thing that you can do is you can use the up and down arrows to scroll through your command history. So I find this pretty useful. So if I want to just change one thing and I want to change that to a wide directory format, I can do that. So I'll go ahead and type in dir one more time, and let's try one more. Let's try to order by date. So we're typing in dir/OD, and now this will sort our directory by date. So if you look on the left hand side, notice now that it's in ascending order in terms of date. So there's tons of options there. You can get help on the directory file. There's something that you need in particular. There's options for almost everything you can imagine for the directory command. So let's go ahead and look at some more kind of key commands so that you can start to navigate around a DOS directory tree. You can create files and copy files. So let's go ahead and look at some of those. So the next thing we'll look at is how you can create directories. And in the same token, I'll talk a little bit about too how you can change your default directory. So the make directory command is MD is the command. You'll also note that you can also use mkdir, that it really is the same command. So once you create a directory, you can use the change directory or the chdr command to change your directory, or also cd. So MD or mkdir or cd or chdr, they're the same commands. And so we'll look at that when we jump onto the DOS machine, but it's very simple syntax to create a directory. And then when you change to that directory, it changes your default so that when you do the next directory command, it's relative to that new directory that you're sitting in. So CD is just a way to navigate around the directories. MD is to create them. So let's go ahead and look at some examples of that. Okay, we're back on my Windows machine here, and let's go ahead and create some directories. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a directory called test. And if I do a directory now, I can see that inside here I now have my test directory. Now if I want to change my default directory to test, I can type in cd test, and now I am in my test directory. Notice how my prompt has changed. I was in users/Eric, now I'm in /test. Now if I want to create some more directories, I'm going to create a test1 directory, a test2 directory, and a test3 directory. Now if I do a directory, notice now that I have all three files. If I want to remove a directory, I can type in remove directory, or rd test1. I'll now remove rd test2 and rd test3, and if I now do a directory, it shows me that I've deleted all three of those directories and there's nothing in this particular folder, which is called test. Now if I want to navigate back to my home directory, I could do a cd to /users/Eric, and that is one way of doing it. Now let me navigate back to the test directory. There is a shorthand called a relative path that you can also use, and I can type in cd ... and that will take me up one level. So let's look at another example of that. So if I cd to our test directory, I can move up 2 levels by typing cd ... and that will move me up 2 levels. So that's just a little bit how you can use CD and MD to create directories and navigate around directories and use the directory command in combination with that. So let's go ahead and remove our test directory, and let's jump back and look at another set of commands for copying files and deleting files. So we already looked at this command, the CD command. Really the help is exactly the same. If you type in the help, they really work together, the make directory and change directory. So let's go ahead and look at our next set of commands. The next thing we're going to look at is copying files from one place to the other. And this is going to be our first example where you can also use just a complete file name, but you can also use wildcards to do that. And you can use wildcards in any number of places in commands. You can also use them in directory commands all over the place. So we'll start looking at wildcards so you can get used to using those. There's 2 examples there of using a complete file path to copy a file called test.dat and users.eric to the root directory or the top level directory, and then a same command using a wildcard which will copy anything with a .dat file extension. So let's go ahead and jump onto our Windows machine and let's look at how to copy files around, and then the next sequence is the natural one, is then how do you delete files after that. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Alright, back on our Windows machine, and I'm going to go ahead and make our test directory again, and I'm going to go ahead and change to our test directory, and just to show that there's nothing in there. And I'm going to create a file. And one way you can do this is you can type in notepad, and I'm going to put in test.dat as my file name. I'm just going to create a file, and it asks me if I want to create one. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say this is my file. And I'm going to go ahead and save that, and it'll save it in the same directory that I launched it in. So I now have a file called test.dat. So if I want to copy that file, the syntax is copy the source file and then the destination file. So I can copy test.dat to test1.dat. And now if I do a directory, I should have 2 files. And so now I'm going to copy that to test2.dat and to test3.dat. And notice how I'm using the up arrow, and I can quickly put in commands for this. So now I have 4 files. So the next logical thing is, how do you delete files? So once we're in here, I can delete a particular file. So I can type in delete test3.dat, and oh, I had a typo there, so let's try that again, test3.dat. And now if I do a directory, notice test3.dat is gone. And so the other thing that's significant there, notice there's no "are you sure?" It just deletes the file, and it does not make it available in the recycle bin that if you make a mistake. So that's one of the downsides of using the command line, is it does exactly what you say, and it doesn't really have much of a safety net. But after you get to learn the command line, it's simple to do. Now, one of the other things I mentioned earlier was the use of wildcards. So let's look at that. So now if I want to do a directory, I can do a dir of star.dat. And that is the wildcard. The asterisk matches anything that anything for a file name. So it'll say anything.dat. So let's use our copy command, copy test.dat to test.bak. So this will be a little bit better illustration. Now if I do a dir with nothing, it'll show us our files. And now if I want to use the wildcard again, I can use dir star.bak. And notice it just shows me the one file. If I do a directory of star.star, that means any file name, any extension. So there we go. I can use wildcards in almost any command. I can use them in the copy command, the delete command. All these commands you can use instead of an individual file name. You can also use a wildcard notation, and it's pretty powerful that you can really get creative with this and do a lot of things. Well, one of the things you have to be careful with is if you type in this command, delete star.star, it will delete every file with every extension. That can be a pretty dangerous command. In this case, I'm in my test directory, and I always want to make sure that I'm really in my test directory. But it does ask you if you are sure that you want to do that. So that's a little bit about copying and deleting files. It gives us pretty much everything that we need. There's only one other command I want to show you that'll kind of wrap up how you can have kind of a basic knowledge of the command line, and that's the tree command. So let's go ahead and do that while we're in here. So I'm going to create a couple of directories. I'm going to create our test1 directory, a test2 directory, and a test3 directory. And now I'm going to type in the command tree. So tree just gives you now a way of visualizing what is the structure of my test directory. So now if I want to go ahead and I want to move to my test1 directory, and I'm going to create a file in here called eric.dat. So again, it asks me if I want to create a new file. I'm going to say yes. Go ahead and put a little bit of data in it. Doesn't really need to have any data in it, but so I now, if I do my directory just to confirm, I have a file in there. And one of the command options with tree is tree/f. And now the /f will force it to show files. So that's how our directory structure looks. So you can use the command line to quickly create any kind of directory structure you need and create files, copy files, and move them in there. So you now have really the basics of how to navigate and copy, delete files, and move them around. So let's go ahead and jump back to our slides and see what else we have to kind of wrap this lesson up. Okay, we've already looked at how to delete files, and here's the help on the delete. So you can both use relative paths. You can also use wildcards, and I've shown you examples of that. The tree directory gives you just a display of the file structure, and we went ahead and looked at that while we were in our last example. And then one last command. If you want to exit the command line, if you want to quit, you can either click on the X button on the top right hand corner, or you can use the exit command, and that will force you an exit. And that's an important command to have at the end of a batch script, that you can exit out of the command line. So we already went through the demo. We talked about getting help, DOS directory commands, how to use wildcards, how to create directories, a little bit about navigating directories, and then how to copy files. And the last thing that we just touched on is how to exit from the command shell. So that's really it for this lesson. The DOS command is an important part of being PC literate. So if you get a job as a help desk personnel or a server personnel, you really need to know how to use the command line. Also, as a programmer, it's extremely helpful. If you're developing code on DOS, you'll really need to use the command line to help automate some of the build scripts and other things that you're doing. So we've already looked at some examples of how to create directories and navigate around. So jump onto your DOS machine, give it a try to work through some of the examples that I've shown you, and that's it. So that's really it for this lesson. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for your interest in this video. If you like this video, please give it the thumbs up button. And also, if you want to see more material like this, please consider subscribing to my channel. Well, that's really it for this video. Thanks again, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.